Welcome, everybody, to this kind of special bonus episode of the Jedi Way. I am one of your hosts, John Rocha, joined, as always, by the lovely Laura Kelly. How are you, Laura?
Doing well. Happy Friday, John, or I guess it'll be Saturday when this comes out, but happy Labor Day weekend to everybody.
There you go. Happy Labor Day weekend. For those of you who are working, I hope you're getting a Monday off to relax a little bit. I know it's been kind of a crazy last few weeks in our world and our country, so I hope you're getting a chance to kind of kick back. Maybe do some COVID type barbecuing inside and relaxing and not having any kind of issues. And for those of you who are not working, I hope you're taking that day to do something really positive for yourself and keep the momentum going of your life. But, I asked Laura if she wanted to do a special episode of the show here, kind of out of the rhythm of the show we're developing every 2 weeks. This is more to focus on the John Boyega interview. We spoke earlier a few days ago and talked about like when big news drops, I'd love to do like quick videos or quick conversational videos about those news items when they do drop, and this one seemed like the right one to start off with. And we're talking, of course, the John Boyega interview with British GQ, where he revealed a lot of his thoughts about how Star Wars, how this last trilogy handled their characters of color, and it caused a lot of controversy out there in the world. A lot of people were on his side, but a lot of people were saying, well, why did he keep coming back? If he had such an issue, why did he do whatever? So I thought it'd be a good discussion for Laura and I to have in this situation. Laura, what were your initial thoughts when you heard all the comments from John Boyega? We'll get into them in just a second, verbatim. But what were your thoughts initially when you read this interview? It was a very long interview, and Star Wars is only like, it's not a big part of it, but it certainly is powerful or big in terms of the things he was saying.
Yeah, he definitely had a lot to say about Star Wars, which is really interesting. Overall, I thought the article was super insightful. I thought it was really well written. I really enjoyed it. It was definitely eye-opening. I say that as somebody who really, really enjoyed The Last Jedi. That's like I think I've talked about how that's one of my top 5 favorite Star Wars films. And so This was definitely a sort of like, it was kind of a come to Jesus moment for me as a fan of that film.
Wow.
And definitely eye-opening. So I think those are my initial thoughts. I laid in bed the morning it came out and sat and read it because I think it came out in British time, so it had already been out for a few hours by the time I woke up. And it was definitely something to wake up to. How about you? What were your initial thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is something that I've been saying for quite some time in numerous shows and in my life for a number of years. Being the son of Latino immigrants, the idea of how people of color are portrayed on screen, how their characters are either complex or not complex or caricatures, has been something I've been talking about for many years. And so we haven't seen those conversations out in public from people who are out in public and working consistently as actors or creators of color. We haven't seen that as powerfully as we've been seeing it lately. And I think it's fantastic. I think it's great to finally have people stepping forward and saying, you know what, this idea that just casting people of color is enough is not enough anymore. You've got to work harder at creating layered, complex, interesting characters that rival the white leads that you put into your franchise, or any leads that you put into your franchise. And that's basically what this seems to be the gist of what John Boyega is saying in this interview. And we've seen it on the TV side of things, certainly. And we're only just now seeing it, I think, in larger numbers over the last few years with the advent of more creators of color getting behind the camera, writing, actors of color coming forward, stating, that they only want to play certain kind of roles. They won't play stereotype roles, and being very involved in the nuts and bolts process of a film coming to fruition. We see this with the terrible passing of Chadwick Boseman. The characters he played were proud characters, historical characters. Even someone like Black Panther is standing for being strong within his race, being strong within his country, being strong for Black people across the world, and what he symbolized there. So seeing John Boyega on the heels of his 5-minute speech that he delivered at Hyde Park that, according to the article, was just completely kind of impromptu and out of the blue. We're starting to see the kind of maturation of a young man, and people forget. I mean, he was in his 20s and whatever. This is a man coming into his own, coming into his voice, and I was really excited about a lot of what he said here in this interview. What struck you the most about what he was talking about? You say you laid in bed. Like, what really struck you and stopped you? It made you kind of put the article down for a moment, kind of absorb what he was saying.
Well, I think it wasn't, I think as a white woman, I think, and as a white person, I think it's important for someone like me to sit back and just listen. When it comes to articles like this, when things come out and when people are expressing these feelings, I think it's really, really important for people just to sit back and listen, to not necessarily pass judgment.
Yeah.
And the first thing that I saw scrolling through Twitter immediately afterwards was a lot of people passing judgment, which is not okay.
Right.
But also not surprising in the least, unfortunately. And so I think also what sort of really struck me, though, more so than the article itself, was a lot of the aftermath that we saw.
Okay.
And not necessarily from, I think maybe some of it was also the lack of people speaking out that I thought was really interesting. I'm glad that John Boyega finally felt comfortable to speak up. I always kind of wondered if maybe like Disney has a sort of like
NDA.
Yeah, there's got to be something that's kind of, that's probably keeping more people from speaking out. And it really kind of, I think it sort of disappointed me that people like Pedro Pascal and Giancarlo Esposito and Carl Weathers did not have anything to say in response to this article, except to help promote season 2 of The Mandalorian, which the premiere date was announced the same day.
True.
I find that extremely suspicious, and I find it really despicable that Disney felt the need to distract from this really important article that I think was really saying something directly to them. It would have been a little bit more fitting, I think, maybe to get a response, especially since they felt the need to respond after John's Black Lives Matter speech in London a few months back. But I think that was really the most striking thing for me. I was a little bit upset by some of the aftermath and then lack of speaking up by some of his peers that I didn't see.
That's an interesting point. We should touch on that. Let's do some of these quotes from John from the article so we can give him proper respect for the things he was saying. In the article, they mentioned how he had a stylist when he started doing the Star Wars films, and when he first started doing press, he would cringe at certain clothes that the stylist would cringe at certain clothes he wanted to go for. The hairdresser also had no experience of working with his hair, but, quote, still had the guts to pretend. And he decided that at some point he could no longer grin and bear it. He said, during the press tour for The Force Awakens, I went along with it. And obviously at the time I was very, very genuinely happy to be a part of it. But my dad always tells me one thing: don't overpay with respect. You can pay respect, but sometimes you'll be overpaying and selling yourself short. And that's an incredible life lesson, I think, for all of us to remember. Sometimes we can get in our minds that we are in deficit to a situation and that we should be thankful we even get a chance to do something like this. And the truth is, there's nothing wrong with having respect for yourself, respect and self-worth, and stepping to the plate and saying, you know what, we're equally going to benefit from this situation. And I think that's what he's basically trying to say. And he was finding his voice to kind of step forward and say that, because that's what studios and a lot of companies bank on, is your low self-esteem or low self-worth, so they can manipulate you and put you in a bad position money-wise, overwork you, kind of put you in a situation where they tell you what to wear, like what he's talking about. Those are those kinds of things that you see there and you confront and you have to navigate in the world. And John speaking openly about it, I thought was really, really powerful. He mentions Naomi Ackie, Kelly Marie Tran, and Oscar Isaac. He said, you get yourself involved in projects and you're not necessarily going to like everything, right? But what I would say to Disney is, do not bring out a black character, market them to be much more important in the franchise than they are, and then have them pushed to the side. It's not good. I'll say it straight up. And the article goes on to mention, as I said, Naomi Ackie, Kelly Marie Tran, and Oscar Isaac. He said he thinks that some people probably call him crazy or that he's making it up. But he said, quote, like, you guys knew what to do with Daisy Ridley. You knew what to do with Adam Driver. You knew what to do with these other people. But when it came to Kelly Marie Tran, when it came to John Boyega, fuck all. So what do you want me to say? What they want you to say is, I enjoyed being a part of it. It was a great experience. Nah. I'll take that deal when it is a great experience. They gave all the nuance to Adam Driver, all the nuance to Daisy Ridley. Let's be honest. Daisy knows this. Adam knows this. Everybody knows I'm not exposing anything. And that is that's so much to explore and navigate. And you go back to what you said, Laura, and it's a very interesting point. How come Giancarlo Esposito and other people of color involved in the Star Wars franchise didn't say anything about this, didn't speak out openly and support it or retweet it or what have you? And maybe they are under some kind of restrictive situation here with The Mandalorian where they can't. Whereas John is now out of Star Wars. He can speak freely. Oscar Isaac, a few weeks ago, also spoke very freely about his experience in a bit of a shade being thrown at Star Wars.
Yeah, and I think John Boyega in particular is poised, and he's in a really great position at this moment, I think, as somebody who owns a production company to, I think, really help move the industry forward. Yeah. And I hope that those are steps that he'll take, and I hope everything that he said in this interview is, it sounds like it's very genuine, and it sounds like lessons that he's learned a lot of lessons in the 6 years that he spent working under Star Wars and working under Disney. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of his production company and where he goes next in his career and the decisions that he makes acting going forward. I think is going to be his story is going to be a fun one to watch. Yeah. And I think he's definitely poised for greatness at this moment.
Yeah. I mean, you make an interesting point. Is his production company going to back up what he's saying publicly, right? I mean, we saw after the Me Too movement kind of blew up, we saw Natalie Portman get crap because her production company kept hiring white male directors. And she had to come out and defend herself and say, well, we'd had plenty of projects with female directors. They just never came to fruition because of how Hollywood is. And so that's another thing, too, is nowadays liberal Hollywood can't even get away with acting like they've always been on the right side of an issue. They're going to get called out within as well. So there's no it's not being allowed anymore to do basically ornamental PR work for yourself. Everyone is getting called out now left and right, and their history is being brought up. So yeah. So I hope John Boyega stepping forward and saying these things powerfully works hard to create projects that are nuanced and layered and have way more power within their characters that resonates within the ethnicity, within the culture, but also within the world itself of anybody watching.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the biggest thing that people should hopefully take away from this article, is that Star Wars and the film industry at large they're not done yet. And there's a lot of work to do in terms of making film sets look more like the real world population. Mm-hmm. In terms of race and gender, it's still too many white faces and it's too many men both in front of and behind the camera. So yeah. Blame whichever entity you wish, Lucasfilm, Star Wars, whatever. Right. I just wish they would have come out and acknowledged this article and made some point to say something about it, and acknowledge that there's still more work to do and lay out a plan for a solution instead of diverting fans' attention away from the real world issues.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because it's something that came up to me when I was talking about this on the Geek Buddies, the other show I have here on the channel. And I mentioned how I don't really go after Kathleen Kennedy because I think she's been incredibly successful financially doing what she's done with Star Wars. But you look at this situation, and John said something about, don't pitch this character as being an important part and then have him brushed aside. How much does Kathleen Kennedy have to kind of take a look at this, or have people take a look at Kathleen Kennedy's stewardship in this situation? And how much of this was about focusing on the white female because she's a white female and sacrificing the black male character storyline and other character storylines, Kelly Marie Tran storyline, Naomi Ackie storyline? Was this an intentional thing where she focused so much on this that she was okay with sacrificing some of the story beats that would have allowed Finn to have a way more interesting arc and not leave fans feeling like they wasted him in 3 movies. Dameron as well. Poe Dameron as well. Not much on Poe Dameron unless you read the comic books. Not much history on Poe Dameron.
Exactly, and the history that is out there in the sort of expanded universe of Star Wars is sort of contradicts each other, which is also frustrating. But my thing with Kathleen Kennedy is that I've always found myself in her corner, just up until recently. I mean, like I was in the auditorium at Star Wars Celebration in 2019 for this Rise of Skywalker panel, and she came out. I was one of the people that was part of the standing ovation. I've always been really excited about the fact that there's a woman in charge of running Lucasfilm. I always thought that was great. And it really hasn't been until just recently where I feel like some of the cracks are starting to get really big. And I'm starting to I feel like I have more and more problems with the things that I'm seeing. And some of it starts with not even necessarily movies, but some of the other content that we've been getting out of Star Wars. The first thing that comes to mind is the Bounty Hunters comic line that came out recently that we don't need to touch on. But I really have kind of always been in her corner just up until recently. And I think that I don't think any part of the shortcomings of the sequel trilogy were intentional. I think there were good intentions behind everything. I think in particular with The Last Jedi, I legitimately believe that they thought that they were doing right by Kelly Marie Tran and John Boyega's characters. I think they thought they were giving them an arc that was meaningful. And I think maybe in some ways you can interpret it that way. But when an actor comes out and says that they saw the movie and saw the final product and they don't think that the arc did them justice, that's when it's important for us to sit back and listen. And understand where they're coming from and understand why. My interpretation of The Last Jedi doesn't matter in this situation. And that's where I'm trying to sit back and try and understand this other interpretation of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, Laura, in this recently in the world of entertainment, who are viewers and fans and also pundits and critics and reviewers and what have you, like we have to have our own personal journey with these pieces of art and with these creators of the art and decide for ourselves, like, okay, you know what? I still like the movie, but I also accept what John Boyega is saying, or, I see what John Boyega is saying, and you know what? I don't like the movie anymore. I don't actually feel like a fan of it, or I may have to take some time to figure out, well, how I feel about the movie. And I think that's all that people want to happen when they make statements like this. I think John Boyega is not saying don't hate. He's not saying hate the movie. He's saying this was my experience, and watching it, this is what I saw. And this is what bothers me about it or hurts me about it. And so it's every person's prerogative to sit back and actually take those in. And kudos to you for doing that, Laura. Other people, like you said, commented immediately and steamrolled it and complained about him complaining about it. But they have no experience of what it's like to be a person of color walking into a franchise like this and then having your character be sidelined essentially for 3 movies and have it be have to tease this love triangle that was going to possibly happen in the first movie and have it kind of fade away by the time you get to the last movie. And so you're just like, okay, what was this? Was it an interracial situation? Were you saying that it was okay for Kelly Marie Tran as a woman of Asian descent and a black man to get together, but you can't have a white woman and a black man possibly get together as your front situation in Star Wars? Is that what you were saying? And so competing against another white man, Kylo against Finn for Rey, because that an issue that you felt was still too taboo for you to lead your franchise? Did the screams about Rey being the lead, a woman lead, a female lead, and all the stuff that happened, was that something that you all were afraid and you played it safe? I just wonder, and I'd love it if we ever got the answers, to be honest with you. And I don't know if we ever will, to be.
No, I highly doubt that we'll ever will. But I think you make a really good point of, how much listening to the noise did Disney do leading up to and then in the aftermath of the sequel trilogy films, individually and as a whole. And I think that as the years go on, we're going to get our answer. And I'm a little bit worried that we're not going to like the answer to that question, which is really unfortunate. But I think all we can do is just kind of hope that things like The Mandalorian that are a lot more, I think, racially diverse, if not, I think more diverse in terms of gender. I wish it was a little bit more in that direction as well, but baby steps. And we'll see where, where the Obi-Wan Kenobi show go and where the Cassian Andor series has made some really interesting casting announcements. I think that, I think hopefully they're going to make some strides there, at least for this on the small screen for now. But I think they have some big steps they need to take in terms of getting things on the big screen. And I'm really hoping that the directors that they've lined up, that we've heard about, I think are prepared for that task. And I have a lot of faith that they do. I mean, I think Taika Waititi is a good option. And I can't even remember who else is lined up. I mean, I'm hoping that something like Rian Johnson would take lessons from this article and take it to heart, and hopefully be at least in the same sort of position to interpret it the same way I am, which is I like the movie that I made, I stand by it, but there are some lessons I need to learn still, in terms of how I interpret these characters.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, I think that's going forward. We'll see how Disney reacts, and we'll see what they do. But already based off season 1 of The Mandalorian, the Filoni Favreau approach has yielded such positive results. And you had a multicultural approach, a diverse approach. You had women and men behind the camera. You had Rick Famuyiwa. You had a black director. You had an Asian director, Deborah Chow. You had people, Taika Waititi. You had different people from different walks of life. Pedro Pascal is your lead, a Latino lead. You don't see his face till the end, but he's Pedro Pascal, so you know it's him. You know it's his voice. You have those guys. Carl Weathers, bringing him into the situation. Even Gina Carano is of Italian descent. This all gives you balance, and so something you can play with. And I think this is the next step in the process of Kathleen stepping down. I think I would be very surprised if by the end of her extension next year, she stays on. I'd be very surprised. And I think for her, it might just be smart to step down because enough is enough. Like everything I do, people just tear it to pieces, no matter what it is, whether it's intentional or not. So why don't I just move on and do other things, and take myself out of the echo chamber? What do you think? Do you think she sticks on, or do you think she's going to kind of step away from this thing now?
Oh, at the very least, I imagine she's exhausted. So I wouldn't blame her at all for wanting to step away, to be totally honest. I'll be curious to see, what names start floating around to sort of take up that mantle.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised when I hear things like Dave Filoni should be stepping into those shoes, because I'm just like, I don't know if people understand how corporate structure works when they say things like that. When you can't just take a creative person like Dave Filoni out of his element and put him in a boardroom. I mean, can you imagine what a waste that would be? Like that's not going to be the direction they go, but I will be curious to see, I guess, what direction they take it in if she does end up choosing to step down, which I'm kind of in agreement with you. I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being the case.
Yeah, I mean, Feige's the anomaly, which is why so many people are like, well, if Feige can do it, if Marvel can do it, but it's not about like anybody can do it. It's more a matter of Feige is that unicorn that was able to do both. And you're right to bring it up, Laura. Not a lot of people, not a lot of creatives can slide into the boardroom seamlessly and deal with the kind of notes and the kind of comments that are made in those boardrooms that can offend creatives pretty deeply and pretty strongly and navigate their way out of it. It's not the easiest thing to do. So just saying Filoni and Favreau should just do it together, you're not being really aware of what it takes to work on both sides of the fence here for a company like Disney, which is notoriously strict about their stuff and notoriously hands-on about everything. So yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, and I agree that I think the other point to be made is that Feige also went into the MCU with a plan.
Yes.
And when it came to paying $4 billion for Lucasfilm, there somehow wasn't a real plan.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, extremely questionable at this point. So I'll be curious to see sort of what the strategy is moving forward and if that should change and maybe go more in the direction of the MCU or something similar.
Was there anything, and as we wrap up here, because I know we've been on for over 25 minutes now, but like, is there anything in this article that you maybe disagreed with or you felt wasn't 100% fair? Because I'll toss this in there. I know that John said that his experience, he was the only actor who dealt with the race thing, but I think Kelly Marie Tran dealt with the race thing pretty strongly and the female thing, as you know, using thing in the more broader term. And was basically pushed off social media. She ran because it just was too much. Daisy Ridley herself got off social media because of the constant barrage of her being a female lead in Star Wars, what she endured. So that's where I don't think John's 100% correct there, but I take his point. Was there anything that you in the same vein, you disagreed or didn't feel like he was 100% correct on in his own interpretation of it?
Well, I'm kind of right there with you. I mean, I had the same thought when I first read that. Was that I mean, Daisy Ridley and Kelly Marie Tran were both literally pushed off of social media by harassment. Yeah. So I think that I don't think that he meant to take anything away from their experience by any means, but I think that that's something that needs to be acknowledged too. That I mean, Daisy Ridley left Instagram and Facebook permanently after comments that she received, and she endured them for a while. Yeah. I mean, when she was cast, we learned of the casting announcement in 2014.
Yeah,
and I think she stuck around for 2 years before she finally left and had enough. But yeah, I don't think that the harassment is fully unique. The types of harassment might be unique to him, and I fully acknowledge that they're not the same situation at all. And it's. Yeah, I'm hoping that people are learning that this isn't going to be how we get to keep these people on social media and get to learn about their real lives and spend time with them. And this isn't the way to go about it. And I hope that those are lessons that people will learn, but I don't think that they are, because it keeps happening.
It does keep happening. I mean, I'm sure you could speak to, and not to go too far off base, but I'm sure you could speak to some of the comments you might have received being in the Schmodown, some of the comments that we saw, on a certain point of view, what happened there at bringing together a lot of the female competitors, speak about some of the things they endured. I know when I first started, I would occasionally get a couple of the racist comments in there as well, being a Latino. And so those things do creep in to the comments, even if you're a low level celebrity in a movie trivia league, they're going to creep in. So imagine being like in Star Wars,
Yeah, I mean, I get them very rarely now and then. I'm extremely lucky in that. I think that there, at least when it comes to the Schmodown, there's a lot of women that had to endure a lot and pave the way so that I had a much smoother ride ahead of me. And I'll be forever grateful for that. But it's unfortunate they had to endure that. And that I think still to this day, a lot more women endure more of the harassment even in the Schmodown community than men do. That certainly continues, and it's getting better. I think that a lot more people are aware of it now, and a lot more people are vocal about it and are speaking up, and they're not suffering alone, and that's really the key to it.
Yeah. Do you hope John's article here kind of wakes people up to maybe another step forward in the fandom to kind of stop this kind of harassment or stop this kind of reaction? You did see some negative reactions, as you said at the beginning of the show, but do you think overall the way it's been, was it received in a more positive way than maybe it would have been 3 years ago, even 2 years ago?
I think maybe it was, but I also think that people have made up their minds about a lot of the points that were brought up in this article. And at this point, you just can't change a lot of people's minds. I don't know if this article convinced anybody to change their mind, is what I'm saying. I think he opened up people's eyes a lot, which is great, which I think that was probably one of the goals, was to just make people aware that this is still a big issue, that it's not fixed, and that the film industry continues to struggle in this way. And it opened my eyes, but it didn't change my mind about anything, that I didn't already believe, which is that, he definitely had a harder time of it than some of the other actors in the franchise. And Finn definitely had I think a deviation in the second and third films that he did, that we didn't see in the first one. Right.
Understood. All right. I think we should wrap up there. Any final words you want to say on this, Laura, that we didn't get a chance to speak about?
No, other than read the article. I mean, don't listen to us just talk about it. Hopefully we can stick a link to it, maybe either in the comments or in the description. But
we'll
go read the article and read it in its entirety, and don't judge, just listen and learn.
Yeah, I would say that too. The article is not just about Star Wars. Star Wars is about 3 or 4 paragraphs, maybe 5 paragraphs of the article. But the rest of the article is about John Boyega, the person, and about his upbringing, about things he experienced, things he saw, his trips to Africa, his father, what he saw his father do, how that inspired him, and all the lessons he's learned as he's gone through this path, and what he's working on, and the new Steve McQueen show he's working on, which sounds really incredible, and I can't wait to see that and see his story within that collection of stories. that he's talking about. So there's a
lot. And the
story
of him getting held for ransom off the coast of Nigeria is really interesting. It's worth the read for that, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting ways it goes, this article. So it's worth, and it's very extensive. So sit down on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon and really read this thing over 15, 20 minutes and absorb it for sure. All right. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. Always good thanks for being open to have these kinds of conversations on here. It's one of the reasons I started doing the show and wanted to do the show with you, to have these like kind of back and forths about subjects like this. So it's fun to get to do it on something a powerful interview like this from John Boyega.
Likewise, John. Thank you.
You're welcome. Where can they find you and everything going on, please?
You can find me on Twitter at @shutup_Laura, or you can listen to my podcast with my friend Alice. That's at Force Toast Pod. You can find links to all of those on our Twitter pages. That's where we are most active. How about you, John?
You can always find me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram. Can't encourage you all enough to please hit subscribe to this channel. Laura and I are going to start doing more of this Star Wars content for you all to enjoy. So please subscribe to the channel to enjoy it, or go listen to us. Maybe you want to just kind of listen to us as you're tooling around the house or whatever. It's on the Outlaw Nation Podcast Network. I always put up the audio the next day after the show drops on YouTube, so you can go and listen to it there. Subscribe to that as well. And don't forget to hit like and leave a comment. The more comments, the more likes you leave on videos like this, it elevates us in the YouTube algorithm and puts it on the side as a suggested video for people who are looking at Star Wars content. So maybe we get some more people coming aboard the Jedi Way ship. There you go. That's what I'll say, the Jedi Way ship. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Much love to you all. Enjoy yourselves. Have a good Labor Day weekend. And Laura and I will talk to you later on this week with another episode, a full episode of Jedi Way. Take care until then.